Welcome back to another episode of the Strive for 25 podcast. I've got an amazing guest on today, Josh Martin in the Northwest, real estate investor. We're going to be digging into his journey. And Josh, thanks so much for making time for us today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So real quick, you know, you're in the Northwest, you're accumulating some real estate. From where I'm at in St. Louis, California, Washington, Oregon, prices are high. To be able to scale into real estate and to acquire rentals, right? Like, to me, it just seems like it's a daunting task to be able to, accumulate the funds for down payment. So if you could give us a little bit of an example of the last property that you acquired, and let's just dig in there for real quick.
Okay, so this property I'm in right now, we're house hacking it, and we just acquired it back in July. It actually took us probably about just under 2 years from the time we kind of even saw the first inclination of real estate and getting into it to jumping into this house hack. And as far as getting this place, the market right now, the way it is and the way interest rates started raising, we just decided, hey, look, we need to get into something. We need to figure out a different way. So one of the people we were following on YouTube was Michael Zuber, and he kept talking about, doing your homework one step at a time. And so we were doing that. And for us, we wanted to, get everything in order first. And that started with credit. Both of us had to get our credit down and everything. There's just so many little steps that we needed to take to get to this place, and we feel getting our credit together was one of the big steps. So once we started getting, everything going, we found a good agent who was also referred, and then referred to a good lender. And, we looked at a couple different lenders as well, but this lender helped us put the deal together and everything seemed to go smoothly. We weren't expecting to get something that we were going to have to fix up. That was one of the biggest things with this. And as rates started going up, to get this property, one thing we had to do was buy down our rate. The next thing we had to do was make sure we bought something that was a fixer-upper, because we wanted something turnkey, but that just wasn't in the cards. So, we had to kind of figure out what else to do. And by running my numbers different way, like Michael Zuber had taught, I was able to figure out, okay, this will work for us if we did this and we did this and this happened to work out, and again, it's a bunch of what ifs, but the cards just happened to fall for us. And for us to get into this, like you said, higher income area, or where the houses are a bit more expensive, we were living in California before this, and it was a lot more expensive over there. We happened to be living in Monterey Bay at the time when we were, first looking into real estate. We started looking into stuff, and it was like the memes that you see. It was like a porta potty for, 500,000. And it was ridiculous that we just were like, we can't do this. There's no way we can invest in California. And even again, back to Michael Zuber talking about spreading your circle out a couple hours, it was kind of pushing us more toward his area and some other areas. And, we were looking to get out of California after that. We were like, let's get out. A lot of people were getting out of California. So we just decided, let's start looking at other markets. Washington was one of those markets. And we found a guy named Dion, and we came up to Washington, met up with him. He's a real estate investor up here. And he kind of has been showing us the path, not so much mentor, one-on-one, but more through his videos and things like that. And then he's given us his email and his phone number so I can text him whenever. So he's kind of become a mentor in the end and helping us with all the little things. But that's how we've acquired this property. And, it's taken, like I said, some buying the rate down and some other little things that we had to do to get in here. But now we're house hacking, and we've renovated the other unit, and now we're trying to get a tenant in there.
Okay. So there's a lot that goes into what you just mentioned. So these are some of the things I want to dig into. I'm going to write these down. So I want to dig into the property details. You mentioned buying the rate down and all that stuff. I want to dig into that. I want to dig into Michael Zuber and some of the content he puts out there. And then you mentioned Dion, and then, moving from California to Washington. So those are a few things I want to dig into. But the actual property, it's a duplex, right?
Yep.
So two units, and you purchased as a primary residence.
Yep.
FHA.
Yep.
So FHA, 3.5% down, live in one unit as a primary residence. rent out the other one, but this was a remodel. So did you do a 203K?
No, we didn't. We had saved up within that 2 years that I was talking about. We had saved up about $50,000, and we were trying to, put a big down payment on something, a little more than the 3.5. But once we got the 3.5, we had a lot of extra money left over, so we just used our own money to do, all the renovations that we needed.
Okay. What year did you move to Washington?
Let's see, it was in at the beginning of 2021.
Okay. So, and you were living in California, you said,
Yeah,
which area?
2020. Was it 2021? I'm trying to think here because it's 2023, 2022, 2022. Yeah, it was 2022.
2022.
We moved at the beginning. And then, yeah, because we were still in California at the end of 2021.
Okay. And where were you living and how much were you paying to live in
We
terms of
were
housing?
paying, we were living in a mobile home in Monterey Bay, and we were paying, I want to say 22 a month.
Okay. Okay. Honestly, I don't even know where Monterey Bay is. So I'm Googling this because I don't even know where it is. Okay. So a
It's
mobile
in
home.
Central California. It's a really nice
Okay.
area.
Okay. So 2,200, you moved to Washington. So at that point in time, how much did you have in savings when you were going
That
to Washington?
I can't recall. Right at the end of when we were trying to move up here, we still had debt. And one of the things that we heard was to get rid of that debt. And I want to say we had about $3,000 or $4,000 still in debt. And we were also saving on the side, and we were investing into some stocks and things. And once we started learning a little bit more, we realized, what are we doing? Let's just pay off all this debt we have immediately. So as we were having our savings come in, we stopped saving for a little bit and just started pushing it all toward the debt. I even sold some stocks and just put it toward the debt and sold the debt off, or got rid of the debt, so that we were at zero and had nothing. So at that point, we had to, move up here, and we just started saving. But the saving really didn't happen until we moved to Washington, because once we got here, our rent was like $1,500. All our bills got slashed almost in half, and we were basically saving about $3,000 a month every month, if not a little bit more. So we were, on track to your Strive for 25. We were saving about 40% actually.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So at that point in time, saving 40%, 3,000 a month, what was it? You mentioned the cost of living, I guess, not only rent, but just the cost of living was lower too up in Washington. What would you estimate the amount that you were saving regularly, like leading up to that move?
Well, we figured right off the bat, just in rent, we were saving like $700 every month right there.
Hmm.
And then our power bill had, like I said, I think that had gone, that probably dropped from, geez, 150 something dollars to down to like 30 or $40, because we were living in the little condo. It was really small. And so we were able to save quite a bit. I mean, even our Wi-Fi bill had gone. I think from up there we were paying around 55, and here we were paying 35. So everything was almost in half.
What about job? Did you have to change jobs or work remotely, or did anything adjust with that?
So with jobs, my wife was already working, and she just had to transfer companies because her company was all over the place. She worked with Whole Foods at the time, and so she was able to transfer. I, on the other hand, was working with a lab because I was in cannabis, and that was a big part of our lives before. And so I was working in a lab doing manufacturing of cannabis. And when we decided to move, we had come up here and checked out the land, looked out some of the areas we might want to be in. Like I said, had lunch with that investor, Dion. And as soon as we got back, I found out that we were going to get laid off. So it almost kind of just worked out that I was going to get laid off. And I said, well, I don't have a job. You can transfer and I'll find something up there. And I had, figured, okay, I'll just get a job at Costco or wherever, just somewhere until I can find something. And ended up finding a job with Frito-Lay, and, they were paying like 22 bucks an hour, which was close to what I was already getting paid there. So I was like, all right, this will work. And, got a job, and we were immediately just off and running again.
So you mentioned, some of these names, Dion and Michael Zuber. So how did you get introduced to Michael Zuber, and then on Twitter, for example, on YouTube, one rental at a time is his kind of branding. But how did you initially get introduced to him?
With both of them, it was through Bigger Pockets, because right at the beginning, it was all YouTube. I was on YouTube one day, just, we were grinding it out. Like I said, buying little stocks here and there. And I wanted to do something more, get ahead quicker, scale up, do something. And so one of the videos I found was like a rich dad, poor dad video. And it kind of, just kind of made my brain pop like everybody else. And I started listening to the audiobook and then Bigger Pockets. And then from there, I heard, about Michael Zuber. He was, I guess, like maybe the second or third something guest on that show. And I had been listening to some of the earlier ones. So then I kind of, go over to YouTube and I try to find people on YouTube, and I found him and immediately got hooked on, everything he talked about was learning your market. And I'm like, okay, this is immediately what I need to do. I need to learn my market. I don't even know about real estate, how to learn a market. What is learning a market? What does running numbers mean? Like, I didn't know anything about anything. I was even watching videos on real estate slang.
So what are some of the like, okay, learn my market. What does that even mean? When you look back on that kind of evolution and process, what are some of the things that you started to learn, terminology or data? Like, what are some of the things that you learned along the way as you first started out that you didn't know?
Yeah, it was running the numbers. That was the biggest thing. Like, I was kind of starting to learn about real estate and that it can make you wealthy and, can give you that time freedom back. And I'm like, okay, but how do I do it? How do I run the numbers so that I know that this is a good deal even, I kept hearing about people buying places that were already underwater and, people that didn't know what they were doing. Cause I guess I was watching, some of those don't get into real estate videos type stuff as well. I want to hear the good, I want to hear the bad. And this was at the beginning. So I was open to hear everything. Little did I know a lot of it was crash stuff. So luckily I leaned toward more of the learning because that's just who I am. I like to learn stuff. And when he talked about learning the numbers, I'm like, okay, I got to find out how to do this. And then I got on my spreadsheets. I started learning actually how to take a house and how to figure out putting the maintenance, the capex into it, the property tax into it, the insurance into it. And once I started realizing all those things and how to put them in there and then find out if I had any profit left, I'm like, oh, this is it. That was just the opener for me. I'm all, now I know how to look for a property that's going to cash flow for me. And that was just what I wanted from the beginning.
So at that point in time, when you're starting to hear and get exposed to Bigger Pockets and Zuber and amongst others, were you in California still at that time, or Washington?
Yeah, we're still in California.
Okay. And like, do you remember what year that was?
It was in 2021, right it was probably somewhere around August, September, something like that. I started watching the videos and just getting all into it, and every day driving to work, listening to the audiobook, because I was about 30 minutes from work to a, so I was about an hour. So I started listening to Rich Dad Poor Dad. That was the first thing that kind of started it. And then, yeah, I started getting onto Dion, Michael Zuber, and all those guys through Bigger Pockets, and as well as a bunch of other people. But Dion clicked as far as being this lazy investor, and us being a couple stoners. I was like, whoa, what? I'm a lazy investor. Let's listen to this guy, And so that's kind of why we even came to Washington, because he kept talking about, if you're going to go somewhere out of state or you're going to move, make sure you have boots on the ground. And so since he was an ex-cop in this area for 15 years, who better than to have boots on the ground and know the area, where the good spots, where the bad spots, and he was willing to give us this information. So I was telling my wife, I'm like, this guy's a good guy. We got to go up there and meet him. So, like I said, we came up to Washington, had a meeting with him, had lunch for like an hour, and he was a really good guy and gave us a bunch of information. And that was it. We made our decision. Let's grab our stuff and move up. And then that's when I said I got home and found out that I was going to end up getting, canned
Yeah.
anyway. So,
So lazy investor, how did you reach out to him initially? On Twitter, or just a comment or a DM, or?
yeah, well, he had his YouTube that I started watching, and he was just putting his email on his YouTube so people could reach out to him. So that's what I did. I just reached out to his email, and I'm not really I can be a bit shy, but I'm more just pedal to the metal. Hey, what's going on? I want to know what's going on. Again, I'm trying to scale up a bit quicker right now. That's why I'm trying to talk to as many people, get out there and let people know who we are. And, eventually, we want to scale up quicker. We don't want to do the lazy way. I'm a bit older now. And so, I see some of these other people have started earlier and I can't compare myself to them. So what I need to do is just figure out what's going to be best for us to get to that freedom a little bit quicker. So that's kind of where we're at right now by starting out house hacking, because everybody keeps saying if I started all over again, I'd start out house hacking. So I'm like, all right, let's do that. And right now we're already, as soon as we can get a tenant in here, we're going to take, we're only going to be paying probably about $1,100 a month for rent in a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. So that's pretty good.
Yeah. That's a great place to be able to get in, start out, get that renter in there, and then go from there. And that's something I want to ask you kind of what's the next plan? But I want to back up for a second. So you're absorbing all this content. You start digging in at the end of 21 and you buy your first property in the middle of 2023. I think it was July, if I remember right.
Yep.
So that's a year and a half, more than a year and a half of, okay, deciding this is where I want to go, put the work in and building, you mentioned building up credit and saving and putting a plan together and then moving like a year and a half. I mean, that's a long time in all reality. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't happen overnight. And especially when we're talking about real estate, I mean, there are, especially right now where prices and rates are, there's a big barrier to entry in terms of the money that you need to be able to get into a house. So the ability to put a plan together and execute over a long period of time, I mean, that's one of the things that's just so important. I think one of the one of the limiting factors is just, it's not a quick fix. It's a long journey. So when you say time freedom and getting that back, you know, okay, real estate, there are risks obviously involved and there are benefits to it and being able to build wealth. Coming back to why was this so important to you at that point in time?
Um, just doing all this, the why was, I mean, we just really wanted to, we've had a different past, where, we just to forget about and kind of try to move on from our, REI stoners. And so we just want to try to do something else. And real estate just seemed like the way to go. And, now we're looking at, we went to get paint and they were asking us for a name and I'm like, how about Martin Properties, because that's my last name is Martin. And I was talking to my wife about it and I'm all, we're going to eventually go a different route and into real estate and this is going to be my life more. This just wasn't what I ever thought it was going to be, was constantly going out there and meeting people and having podcasts talking about real estate, and it's something that's enjoyable for us. But, again, as far as just leaving the REI stoners in the past, I can see that happening in the future for sure. It is something that we just kind of wanted to start out letting people know that, hey, even if you do smoke every day, you can still accomplish this too. Like I just mentioned, what we just did to get this duplex. And, so if there is somebody watching and they happen to smoke every day, don't think that you can't do it too. You do have to make sacrifices. We didn't go out to dinner at all. I mean, maybe a couple times here and there for a celebration of an anniversary or something, but a lot of people go out every night. We didn't. We just didn't. We saved every penny we have, and we kept hearing everybody talk about, Mindy Jensen talking about on Bigger Pockets, saving and sacrificing, and so that's what we did, and that's what it took, for us to get this duplex. And hopefully we'll be able to scale up quicker, like I said, and maybe even meet some people that are private money in the future. I know that's stuff that you've talked about, and yeah, it's something that we'd like to dig deeper into.
Yeah, I mean, one of the, I just turned 40 this year. And so like time, right? Like, you look at time differently the younger you are than versus, you get a little older. And, one of the things that I say is, when your why is strong enough, the how figures itself out. It doesn't really matter the how. If that why is strong and you have that in your vision and your focus and build it into your subconscious every single day, that vision, that goal becomes a reality. It's just a matter of time. And the how doesn't really matter. You figure out the right way to get there. And, if you look back 5 or 10 years, or how many years, why wasn't real estate something that you saw as an opportunity, or why wasn't something that you did sooner?
Back then, we had a lot of different other we had things that we were struggling with. My wife's epilepsy, she really, couldn't work. There was points where she was having a seizure every single week, and maybe sometimes more. It was just something that we were battling back then, and that was the most important thing in our life. So back then is when I was cultivating, and I was doing this stuff on the side, and we were really just again trying to get her healthy. That was our goal in life. And eventually, one of the things, we like to be like everybody else. We like to drink, we like to go out to Vegas, and we like to do stuff like that. And one of the things we didn't realize was that also having the epilepsy stop was to stop drinking alcohol. That's a big part of people that have epilepsy. They can't drink at all. And so once we talked to the doctor about this, and we had a good neurologist, because she's gone through several of them. You really have to go through different doctors, and we had one that was really good. And he let us know that it's also going to be the drinking. You're going to have to stop that. He also was the one who said, go ahead and try cannabis as far as something to help, because she had tried the different medicines and none of the medicines were working. So with the combination of stop drinking and taking the cannabis in a more concentrate form, it went from having a seizure once a week, maybe once every couple of weeks or something like that. She'd have once every 3 months, and then it went to 6 months and 8 months and 10 months, and it just kept getting longer and longer, the span. I mean, and then after that, I think after that last one, it's just she didn't have one for a long time. So it's been about 5 years, I want to say, and she hasn't had a seizure since. So it took a long time. It took a lot of work for us to get to that, but that's what we were kind of focused on. And that's again another big part of our why, is to have something in our future so that these rentals can be paying for our health insurance, our health. If something happens, that we don't have to sit here and go, oh, we got to grind really hard so that we can pay for these medical bills or whatever happens to be. So like I said, leaving that REI stoners thing in the past, and not something we want to forget about, but we do want to know that you know the REI stoners thing is just kind of like getting us out there right now. You know what I mean? I don't want to live on it forever, but the epilepsy is something that we conquered, and we have nothing but thanks for THC for it.
Thank you for sharing that. And so when you say REI stoners, you're talking about Twitter?
No, just about
Or
our name, like I have on Instagram and stuff. We probably in the future are going to go with something a little bit different, as far as, like I said, Martin Properties, or something that's a little bit more professional. Because when we do reach out to people in the future for private money or something, I don't want to be coming out with having my handle be REI Stoners. Again, it's a beginning. It is something I wanted to start off and let people know that, hey, this is something that you can do too. But there's other ways that we can get the message across.
kind of going back to the why part, having the real estate be able to support the lifestyle, right? Having the income come in. And that kind of goes back to, you mentioned, stockpiling cash, saving money, limiting the money going out. What has that been like? How have you been so successful in staying on task with that mission?
Well, when I moved up here, immediately the job with Frito-Lay was like 12 hours a day. So I was getting constant overtime. When I got home, I was tired. I just basically, you know, my wife loves to cook. She loves to bake. So everything, we do. That's one of the things we spend a bit more money on, is food, because we eat a lot of whole food stuff and a lot of, Trader Joe's, a lot of just better for you foods, I guess. And we don't, do sodas, high fructose, things like that. A lot of fruits, vegetables, meats and whatnot. But, it's just something that we kind of push toward, in our lifestyle. But I'm sorry, what was the question there? Where did we start again?
Yeah, well, like, okay, I want to go save money and limit my expenses. I mean, like, it's human nature, right? Like, it's not always easy to stay on task with something that can be difficult. So you're, I guess, limiting the exposure out there in terms of costs.
Yeah, so that's what we did. We didn't go out and eat. We didn't go out to the movies. We didn't do anything. Like I said, one of the big things is when we moved up here and I got a job with Frito-Lay, and I did have 12 hours a day. I was beat at the end of the day. So we basically ate, had a good meal. We spent a little time with each other, and then I went to bed, and did this all over again. And I started at 4 a.m. So I had to be
Wow.
up, like at 3. So I have an early schedule, and, it's just something that I just did every single day. And it almost prevented us from spending any money. I was just working all the time, and same with my wife. She had quite a busy schedule herself. She was, an assistant manager. So she would have to come in at certain times of the day. Sometimes she'd just get called in. So we were all, both of us were getting overtime. And, it was a bit easy, I guess, to not spend money when all you're doing is working. But we knew by working, it's only going to be for so many years. We kept hearing everybody just talk about it. If you can grind out for so long, and I'm a Laker fan, so I'm a Mamba mentality here, trying to get up and grind every day. And, lately I've been listening to the Marcus Aurelius meditations, trying to understand what those are about and, how to change, focus in my brain and, things like that. So it's just that mentality that I'm trying to have in life that's going to, get us to that time freedom back, and it means sacrificing right now.
I mean, listening to podcasts, Marcus Aurelius meditations, like the way that I equate that stuff is like when you have a mission, when you have a vision and a goal that's in front of you that, may seem difficult or challenging or a lot of work, like doing things like meditations and listening to quote unquote boring stuff about, real estate or investing or this and that. Like I know me personally, 10 years ago, these things were not on my mind at all because I didn't have certain visions. Right.
You're right. You're right. Yeah, I wasn't, like I said, I was focused on my wife. We were doing other things at the time. And everybody talks about wishing they started earlier, and I'm 49 right now. And I told my wife, I'm all, I'd like to try to do this in the next, 5 to 7 years, which means scaling up a bit quicker and trying to take, some risky chances. And I mean, again, I grew weed and I did stuff like that in the past. And, I'm willing to take risks. So as long as they're the right ones and I'm getting my numbers right, then, I like to get out there. And, like we talked about before, the rates were going up when I got this place. And when we first started looking, they were low. So you kind of just got to do what you can do to get into a property. I kept hearing your podcasts and, Financial Firefighter and everybody talking about, time in the market and not timing it. And so we were just like, let's just get enough money and find that right deal, and that's what it was. It was work every day and look for the deal when I got home, spend 2, 3 hours online looking for houses, crunching numbers and listening to boring stuff, like you said, or reading a boring book, and that's what it takes.
So kind of getting back into the deal, right? So you're out there looking for different, opportunities and listings. And why was it this one versus other ones? How did these numbers shape up versus the other ones? Why did this deal fall into place?
All right, so that's a good question. So we were originally, when we tried to see what we qualified for, about $500,000, maybe a little more. They said maybe up to 520 or something.
Can I
So we
can I
started.
stop? Can
Oh
I
yeah,
stop you for a second?
yep.
So when you say we qualified for that price, when I'm talking about qualifying or limiting factors, it can either be cash available for down payment and closing, or it can be income ratios. So for your situation, are you okay kind of sharing what was the limiting factor? Was it debt to income ratios and income, or was it the cash part? How would you, why were they limiting you to that number, so to speak?
Well, we just had our W-2 jobs. We didn't have anything else going. And so when I originally started all this and kept hearing everybody just say, reach out to your bank, we had US Bank. So I just reached out to them and say, hey, what would it take for us to, get a, 3.5% FHA loan? And so, they asked us to put in all our, W-2 info. So we grabbed all our information and sent it into them. And then they basically came back and said, that's about what we qualified for. So we were like, okay, so if we did borrow money, that's what we'd be able to borrow roughly around right there.
Okay. So at that point in time, you submit stuff to the bank. They tell you what you can qualify for. And then you bring in the duplex part of it. Is that what they initially looked at? Or did that change things when you switched it to a duplex from, let's say, a single family? Or how did that go into the equation?
Oh no. So originally when I first did it, I did do it for a duplex, but this was in California when I first just started calling everybody and doing everything that I needed to do, and that's what they said. And we weren't ready to jump in. I just wanted to have an idea of what we qualified for based on our income. And once I knew that we couldn't buy anything in California. So that's when we started looking around here, because we started noticing that for a duplex in Washington that was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath was around $500,000 up to 550, but we knew even down to 450. So we were like, hey, look, if we get a 2-1 duplex in Washington, we could afford that. And that's what we qualified for. So then we contacted someone else up here, and they crunched our numbers, did the same thing. And they were basically said the same thing. We were roughly in the same ballpark. So we were like, all right, perfect. So we got 2 different entities telling us the same thing, and, 2 different locations. So that's why we ended up moving up to Washington. And again, we were looking for a 2-1. That was our whole thing. 2-1 is what my numbers were crunching, because that's what we qualified for. But one day I got an email and it was a 3-1 and it was 495. And I'm like, wait, what? All the 3-1s around this area have been 600, 650, even 700, So I'm like, this is crazy. This can't be right. So I called my agent immediately and said, hey, what's going on with this place? They ended up that weekend had an open house. So I came to the open house with, I guess, a few other people, and yeah, I got to look at it, and it was a bit beat up, but it looked like this could work for that number, because like I said, everything in the area was like 650, and this place was only 495. So I figured, hey, if we put in, 50,000 or something, we could probably get this thing, worth, what some of these other places are in the area, and probably get a better rent for it. But I figured immediately, there's no way we're going to get it. Somebody's going to beat us out of it. Somebody's going to have more money or something, because we had already been having our agent, reach out for different stuff, and everything kept falling through one after the other. So, we were amazed when, my agent called and he said, hey, they want to work with us. And, let's, because I basically said when the offers were after the open house, I said, all right, let's make our offer. But because there was so much damage, I told my wife, let's see if one of the things I wanted to do is buy the rate down. Let's see if he'll help us buy the rate down. And my agent was like, I don't know if that's a good idea that we immediately ask them for money when it's a pretty good deal, except for some of the renovation. And I'm like, yeah, but dude, there's a lot of stuff going on in here, and we don't exactly know. Let's just go for it, And I kept hearing the other people, that were at the open house, talk about the construction in the back here. And there are some apartments that have gone up. They're already built. So they were concerned with noise. There is no noise. They're doing inside stuff right now. So there's nothing really going on outside. And if anything, I keep hearing that it's going to raise the value of the rents around the area, because they're brand new. And we started trying to research what some of the rents over there are going to be. And they're going to be like 2 bedrooms for around the same rent that we're going to have for a 3-bedroom. So, that lets us know that we're doing pretty good by what we're asking for rent here.
So you get the listing, you start crunching numbers, estimating the rent for the other unit. How did you go about kind of analyzing that? What tools or resources did you use to kind of, pull in the data?
Excuse me. So with that, the first thing that we do is we have this site that we're on, Rentometer or Rentometer, and we check that. And we know it's not completely 100%, but we check it anyways just to have an idea. And then what I do is just get on Zillow and apartments.com and look all around the area and kind of see what other comparable rents that have with the stuff we have. So then the last thing that I do is get onto the HUD.gov page and see what Section 8, what they would be paying me for Section 8 housing for my 3-1 in my county. And in my county right now, Section 8 would be paying 20. So, but I think that's with utilities and all that combined. So what I'm asking for is 23 over there right now. And I've actually had some people reach out that want it, but they just don't qualify for our criteria, which we're trying to get a little bit higher credit score. So.
Okay. So you mentioned 3-1. So you have 2 units. Are both of the units 3-bed, 1-bath?
Yes, they're both 3-1 bath. But what was confusing, and I think maybe some of the other people might have saw when they looked it up, was that when you go to look up the property and you try to find out, because you can just basically go online and get, everything about the house, and so that's kind of what we were trying to do. And when we did, it said it was a 2-1 in one side and a 3-1 in the other side. And I had come to the open house and I walked the whole property and I knew there was 3-1 on both sides. And I'm not sure if maybe some of the other people saw the listing saying it was a 2-1, because it did say it also in the listing that it was a 2-1. And so maybe some people crunched their numbers as a 3-1 and a 2-1 and it didn't make sense, because we were trying to figure out the same thing. So I called my agent. I'm like, hey, I walked the property. It says 3-1. Is there some reason why in the county records it says that it's a 2-1? Because this is blowing my mind. And so I was asking other investors, and they're all like, yeah, there's a possibility that it's a small septic tank. And because of that, they consider it can only take a 2-1 and a 3-1, and maybe they added another bedroom. And I'm all, no, all these bedrooms look, the whole complex looks identical. It doesn't look like any add-ons or anything. They looked everything out. They said there was some problem in the county records, that it was wrong and that they were listed as 3-1s, and I can rent them as 3-1s. And I was like, if I could rent them as 3-1s, let's pull the trigger on this.
How did you kind of back into or project what the actual payment would be?
So when I was trying to figure out the payment, I have this, it's a little calculator that I got from a guy in California. And it basically, you could put in all your numbers for, what you're going to put down, what my FHA upfront it was going to be, because there's a 1.75% FHA upfront as well you have to put in. So you can click all the little boxes and figure out all the money that you're going to have to put forward. The problem with that is it doesn't always work out that way, because your lender, can change things midway as things are going. And one of the things was we got the seller to put some money in on buying the rate down, and we had put in 13,000 total to buy the rate down. And so I was going to buy it down to 6. And then my lender called me the next day and said, hey, the rate has gone down a little bit. I can actually get you in at 5.75 and we'll lock you in right there, unless you just want to take the money back and have more money. And I'm like, no, let's just do it. Let's lock me in at 5.75. So we ended up doing that.
So you get the ballpark on the payment, you use a ballpark on the rate. What about closing costs? How did you estimate closing costs versus what it came in at the end?
So then at the end, because things changed in the middle of the whole deal. One of the things was we had the inspection come and there were some problems with the place. So we had our own contractor come in and give us an estimate of what it was going to take to fix all these things. So then we came back and told the seller, hey, look, there's a bunch of damage that's going to cost. We want you to pay for this. It's going to be an extra, $5,000. And then the appraiser came in and the appraiser said there was another, maybe over $5,000 and stuff that needed to be fixed, but it wasn't on me. It was on the seller to fix it. So they basically told the seller, hey, look, if you even want to sell this place, you're responsible for fixing all these things like vapor barrier under the house. There was a whole awning in the back for the patio that was just falling down. Like it could have killed somebody, really. It was a lot of weight. So they had to tear all that down. But there was a lot of things he was responsible for doing, which, fixing some siding, things like that. So that all got fixed. And when all that kind of came through, there was a bunch of extra money coming in from the seller that they were figuring out, okay, well, what were we going to do with this money? So they were just, as I talked to my lender, I just wanted it all going in there so that I can have a lower payment, all in all, because I wanted to save as much money as I could. And so it ended up coming in the end, I only ended up paying out of pocket $18,250 for the FHA, closing costs, and everything completely.
Okay. So I'm going to kind of just dig into this for a second, just because people out there may want to hear about the ins and outs of these numbers. So the purchase price was how much again?
So all in all, the purchase price was $505,000, with the seller giving us back $10,000 in concessions and then throwing in $3,000 himself to buy the rate down.
Okay. So 3.5% down of 505, that's 17,675. So you're bringing all in 18,250. So that's basically your down payment plus the seller covering almost all the closing cost.
Yep.
And so that 10,000 and 3,000, that was enough to cover the closing costs
And buy the rate
and buy the rate down.
Yep.
So do you remember, you buy the rate down, where did you get to? 5.75? Where did you get to at the end?
I got to 18,250.
No, I'm sorry. What interest rate did you get to?
Oh, interest rate 5.75.
Okay. So buying the rate down means, paying dollars out of pocket to pay points to buy it down. Do you remember what the lender would have had the rate at without buying the rate down at that
What my
point?
rate was, I think around 7.25,
Okay.
something like that.
Okay. So yeah, we're kind of in weird times, paying points sometimes can really drastically lower the rate based on how these rate sheets are. So it's definitely weird times.
And
Um
our credit had to do with it as well. So, and our
mhm.
credit was good. And my wife had been working as soon as we figured all this stuff out a year and a half or almost 2 years ago. My wife started immediately working on her credit because she didn't have any credit. She didn't have any credit cards. And everybody kept saying, like they say, it's worse not having any credit. So we just immediately got her a credit card. She started working on it, got another credit card, started working on it, and her credit score just started building up quickly. And that's again another thing that it took.
So I want to kind of skip forward. You mentioned kind of scaling and doing it quickly. What does that mean in terms of like the next step? Like, what's the next example of when and how and what do you want to do next?
I would love to do some sort of seller financing deal. I'm reaching out to different people and talking to them, and just trying to meet as many people as I can. You never know what kind of deal will happen. And I'm actually gonna Michael Zuber has a convention in February in Vegas, which I bought tickets for. So I'm going to get to meet a bunch of people there. And, I'd like to just learn more about seller financing and meet, some private money people so that I can figure out how I can get a bigger property. How can I get a 10 unit or an 18 unit or something bigger, with someone else's money, and I find the deal and I manage it. And it's just, again, scale up a bit quicker so that I can hit that time freedom with my wife, and that we can retire to something else, not just to retire to be lazy stoners, but retire to, my wife would love to make cheese and to maybe have her own cheese business or something, because it's just one of her passions. We both love to travel and go to Italy and things of that nature, so.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. I love Italy. That's where my wife and I went for our honeymoon in 2014. So I could talk for hours about it, but okay. You decide to leave, kind of going backwards. You decide to leave California and then to do this in Washington because the prices, right? The prices, the barrier to entry, the numbers.
Yep. The
Like,
boots on the ground as well, having the
yeah.
Dion to help us out. There was a bunch of places where I'd see a property come up and I'm like, "Ooh, this one works." And then I'd email him and I'd be like, "Hey, I'm looking at this property." And he's like, "That is one of the worst areas. You do not want to buy around there." He's all, "The cops are even afraid of going there." And I'm
Oh
like,
wow.
"Oh, man, really?" So that was some of the advice I was getting from this investor ex-cop, that really helped us in our journey not buy a bad deal.
And so Dion is not the realtor, right? Dion is just a third party just helping you guys out.
He's just helping us out. He's an investor helping a lot of other people out. He has a YouTube channel, Dion Financial Talk, and it's really good. It's just, he's just trying to put information out there, and, it's up to you to take it and to see what you can do. But I think a lot of it is, are you willing to take those leaps, when you find those deals? Because there was several times during this deal where I could have just been like, this is too scary. I don't want to do it. And I could have just backed out, and we could not be sitting here in the situation we were because we got cold feet. And I can see that probably happens quite a bit with people.
That right there, I mean, not to kind of go on a tangent, but like I've been kind of putting out some content recently and building some more videos on this specific topic, that like the difference between somebody that's in the game and scaling and someone that's not is confidence. Confidence that the strategy will work, confidence in their income that, hey, I'm going to be able to save money and have some buffer in case things don't go right, confidence in mentorship, confidence in the area, confidence in all the other things that build up to have the money to be able to have a down payment, right? Like all that stuff builds into the confidence. And that's why we talk on this channel about increasing income. If you can increase income, that just it minimizes risks elsewhere. And that's obviously hard to do, but we're seeing people do it. And that's why we talk about it. What
No, and people can do it. I mean, my wife's doing it right now. She's moved from one company to another company and taking, multiple positions, and just keeps moving up. And, granted, as you make more money, they tax it. But at the same time, as long as you're taking that more money you're making and you're investing it into the right deals, it'll work for us quicker.
Going back to the process, the entire journey, is there something that you learned that you never even could have imagined to think of that, but now it's like part of your process or part of the way you look at things, something that you just never even imagined, the things you don't know to know, kind of a thing?
I think a lot of the things that I didn't really know before this journey was some of the things on how to work with contractors, how to, e- again, this is something I've heard in a lot of videos on how contractors can be, not on top of the game. Some of them will rob you, some of them this, some of them that. And so that was one of the scariest things for us to buy this place and know that was a thing. So there is a guy on YouTube, the Lumberjack Landlord. He gave us the confidence, and I actually got into his course that he has, and that course basically helped us have the confidence to talk to these contractors, how to figure out how to get multiple offers, how to, again, I can maybe get intimidated by some of these guys coming in and saying, this is what it is, and me not understanding what he's even talking about can be very scary. Yeah, there's a pipe in the X13 that needs to be changed. All right, sure, go ahead, change it. I don't know what he's talking about. So, for me, it's luckily I do have some construction background in my family. So what I've been referring to is my brother. I don't like to bother him too much, but he has been in construction a long time. And so I'll give him a call, be like, hey, this is something I'm trying to do with this contractor. What do you suggest? And he'll let me know, what I might do or what I might do differently if I've already pulled the trigger on something. So, but that is a good resource to have, is when you do have family, make sure you use it.
Yeah, absolutely. One more thing, we're coming up on time here. You mentioned the 10 unit, right? Like, okay, maybe it's seller financing, maybe it's a fix and flip, but add value. Kind of going back to that confidence part of it, like 10 unit, that's a big deal because you're kind of falling out of the 1 to 4 unit, residential conventional loan tools, and you kind of get into the commercial lending, private money, hard money, this whole seller financing, whole kind of different world. And, you know, the journey, the confidence, like 5 years ago, could you ever have imagined talking about wanting to buy a 10 unit?
No, probably not that either. That's probably another thing that's going to be scary, is going to this convention and even talking to people. My wife has been having to do that with her job. And, it's just something we kind of pump each other up. Like, you can do it. Just make sure you ask these questions. And, everybody can be scared at times, but it's just once you get to that point or you get to the situation, just getting in there and asking the questions, and having that paper and that pencil and writing stuff down, being able to exchange information quickly is another thing. So I bought one of those little cards so that I can just scan it on someone's phone and they can have all my information if they need to get a hold of me. But
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. I've used the word paywall several times, talking about kind of this barrier to entry or barrier to information, kind of the array of information. You got YouTube, you've got, internet, you got all these free resources, right? And there's also things that you have to pay for. What are some of the things that you have paid for that you regret, or things that you paid for that have been worthwhile? Can you share any examples?
yeah, I haven't paid for anything that I regret. I paid for Matt the Lumberjack's course, which is, like I said, it's helped me out a lot. I've paid for a little membership on Dion's YouTube page, which makes me a member of his channel. I've paid for, Michael Zuber had a course like right when I got this. He had it for like really cheap. It was like he had a Christmas special of like $160 or something, and I got it back then. So there are a few little courses that I have got, little small things that have helped me. But that, like I said, that Michael Zuber, when I got into, really helped me learn how to crunch those numbers. And that was just super beneficial for, so nothing I've regretted. Rentometer, I've got a little subscription for Rentometer. Again, it helps. It's not like completely 100% accurate, but I like to use it as reference because it does pop up other information and comps in the area. So yeah, so I think those are some of the things that I've paid for. Even YouTube Premium is something like, you just don't want to listen to commercials when you're, me, when I'm at Frito, or now I've moved on from Frito and I'm with another merchandising company. I get to listen to my headphones all day. I do not want to hear commercials. I have to reach into my pocket to hit skip all the time. So, having the premium on YouTube is great if you're just going to listen to podcasts like yours all day.
I mean, thank you for sharing that, because at the end of the day, it's like there's all this information out there. Well, what's the good information that can be worthwhile, actionable? and, point somebody in the right direction. I do have a side question. If you're on your phone listening to good stuff all day with YouTube or podcasts or whatever, how long until your phone dies?
Geez, it usually is pretty close to being dead by the end of the day. So I have to be careful. Luckily, I have a work phone. So my boss, if he needs to get a hold of me, my phone won't be dead if they have to get a hold of me. But I have this little charger in my backpack. So if it starts getting low,
I mean, who knows? Maybe you put that out there as an affiliate. Amazon, you build your own Amazon store of how to, you know, listen and listen to podcasts and whatever all day, and you sell your little battery pack
yeah,
on
right.
Amazon, whatever. Anyway, that's where my mind goes, because there's just so many people that are doing different things to be able to generate side income. At the end of the day, like, this is good stuff. Thank you for allowing us to kind of dig deeper on this journey, the process, some of the numbers, and sharing this, because you know, real estate, it's a game. It's not easy. It's a long game. It's not a quick fix. It's not a end all be all in terms of, get rich quick, but it's a wealth multiplier. And if you know the blueprint, you can find, value in the right places. It can be a life-changing vehicle. And the confidence part, like, that's something that it takes time to build. I guess last thing, 2024, do you have any tangible goals you're trying to hit?
The main thing that we want to do in 2024 is we want to make sure this property is completely stabilized, and we want to have doubled just our connections in both of our industries, in our real estate and in my wife's industry. We just want to try to meet as many people as we can, because knowing the right people can definitely boost you forward quicker. So if we can
Absolutely.
start meeting some people, I am not opposed to getting like I said, an 8 unit, a 10 unit, something a bit bigger, and just start learning. Throwing myself in there is the best way to learn, making those little mistakes. We've made mistakes over here at this property. Even with the course that I took, I've made a couple mistakes with some of the contract. Even with advice from people, I've made a couple mistakes. And it's now that I've made them, I won't make them again.
Awesome. Well, Josh, thank you so much for making time. I can't wait to dig in again very soon and get some more updates. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you again for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks, Josh.